I'd love to introduce our next speakers. We have Pilar Rueda, Manager, Consulting at Smartsheet. And I'm just going to read her beautiful bio here as she comes to the stage. So Rueda was born and raised in Mexico City, where she went to school and completed her undergraduate studies in engineering at the University of Monterrey. She ventured abroad in search of new experiences and people to places like Sydney, London, and the US. Her career involves roles, it includes roles in consulting and project management at the Royal Bank of Scotland, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, and HSBC. In her current role as consulting manager, she manages a team of 7 highly talented people and a host of very exciting projects as they collectively endeavor to take Smartsheet to the next stage of its growth cycle. And Pilar will be in conversation with our very own Meg Alexander, who is delivery and marketing specialist at Power to Fly. I'll pass the mic to you two. Enjoy. Thank you for kicking off today's session.
Thank you so much, Mariella, for that amazing introduction. Pilar, I'm really excited to get started with this, these questions and kind of tell people a little bit more about yourself as well as what your career journey has looked like. So can you tell us, kind of give us a little bit of insight into your career journey and yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the introductions. As they were saying, I'm originally from Mexico, where I studied my undergrad. And I ventured into an engineering degree because I liked the challenge and I thought it would open doors. During my engineering degree, I did face some adversity where certain elements were still not very open for women. And that was also part of the challenge for me. I was always trying to open a door for other women to join the degree and hope to be a source of inspiration. It was challenging but rewarding because I had the opportunity to then go and study in London a master's degree. And upon graduation, I joined the financial services. I was not actively looking for a role in financial services, but they were actively looking for people with my background. So I think it was a good opportunity. And looking back at my degree, it did open a lot of doors. And as I started in London, I started working in project management and PMO within the financial services. And I had the opportunity to work as a consultant and then as a project manager in different banks. And I really enjoyed the experience, but I always thought something was missing, and it was leveraging like my engineering degree and the skills I developed during my undergrad. And that's why moving to Smartsheet was the right move for me, because I thought that's where I was able to fully leverage those missing skills, like in tech, like a lot of those analytical skills that I now use in my current role, like I was able to leverage them. And I've been very happy that as part of my growth and development, I've been able to find the right path where I feel a lot more like engaged and able to contribute a lot more.
That's really great to hear. And I actually want to dig in a little bit on Smartsheet there, because obviously that you are here on behalf of Smartsheet with us today. I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about what you do at Smartsheet, and maybe if you could tell us a little bit about like what next project you're working on that is exciting you most.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience at Smartsheet. So I started as a consultant, and as a consultant, you would start like working with customers on a daily basis, like trying to understand their processes and help them improve their processes with the implementation of Smartsheet, like trying to take some of those pain points of like having to send emails back and forth, and then maybe just using a collaborative tool like Smartsheet to share information there. So those things is where I started as a consultant. And then moving up to the senior role, I had the opportunity to help onboard new people, train them, coach them, and lead larger projects. So part of the growth is starting to lead like from smaller to medium and very large projects, and then becoming that coach and mentor for new people. And as part of my senior role, I was given the opportunity to become a manager, just again, take it to the next level with the coaching and mentoring. So we've been growing a lot, and especially in consulting this year. And our growth has almost doubled, like the team has almost doubled in size. So it's been a very, part of my latest projects has been getting our new team, our newer folks up to speed with our processes, our procedures, making sure that they're growing, that they're learning, and they're being ready to take different and bigger challenges the way that I was when I first onboarded, and making sure that they're enabled to fulfill their goals.
I mean, that sounds like, kind of pulling people up and helping them to reach where you have reached is a very big theme throughout your career. And I would wager it's probably a thing you do in your personal life too. People that do that tend to not only reserve that kind of behavior for their professional lives. Can you tell us a little bit about Smartsheet's DEI journey? Because obviously, like you said, pulling more women into the space, pulling more underrepresented people into the space is a passion of yours, and that should be the heart and the goal of any company's DEI initiatives. So why don't you share with us a little bit about Smartsheet's DEI journey so far? Because I did hear a lot about their employee resource groups, and I'd like to dig on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as Smartsheet has growth, part of that growth has come with the DEI, especially this year. So I've always been, I think from day one, someone reached out to see if I wanted to be part of the Hispanic and Latinx initiatives for. It started with, we were just part of the, Hispanic and Heritage Month celebration. We would do something. That was the last couple of years. This year, it became a lot more formal. So at the beginning of the year, someone reached out to say, hey, we're creating these ERGs. I know you participated on the Hispanic and Latinx. Would you be interested in being part of the group? And I said yes. I didn't know what ERGs meant back at the time. I would just hear a buzzword and read online and be like, all right, this could sound like an interesting opportunity. And I can tell that Smartsheet has also grown and developed this year. It might have started, especially for our ERG, it started a little bit slow. We were all a little bit lost in terms of what was the purpose, how could we enable people, how could we create a lot more awareness about it. And I think part of our growth started happening towards the Hispanic Heritage Month, where we're all right, let's start taking it a little bit more, not seriously, but try to put a little bit more effort. And I think a lot of people came together to start thinking about ideas to generate awareness. And what I really like is, as part of this whole ERG journey, we've had access to very senior people in the organization, like our VP, to help understand what we're trying to do. Amelia, she's been very open and very close to it and very, helpful for us to continue developing the ERG. And I think, again, it's been very rewarding to feel like you're not alone trying to figure it out, that they're actually investing a lot of time and effort, and you have access to very senior people to make sure you continue developing these.
I absolutely love that. And you're right. That moment of kind of starting an ERG or starting any group really it's always uncertain, right? Because you don't know what you're hoping to get out of this. Improvement is something that everybody is aiming for, but it's such a nebulous term and it means something different to everyone. So when you first started, obviously you were a little bit kind of unmoored or not really sure what direction you were going to take. What's the best thing that you've seen the Latinx and Hispanic ERG accomplish so far?
Yeah, I think for now, the pinnacle for us this year, we had a guest speaker, Roberta, come in and talk about her experience during the Hispanic Heritage Month. And it was the pinnacle because we started from not knowing what was the ERG for. In my view, it was all right, let's try to just connect with people. That's the starting point. Let's just get a group where we start understanding who's available. And we even sent a form to see what people wanted to get out of it. The next step was getting some of that feedback and enable as part of the Hispanic Heritage Month. And when we had Roberta as a guest speaker, her story was so powerful that a lot of people who weren't just would identify as Hispanic or Latinx reached out to me to say this was great. I connected with her in so many levels or different aspects. And basically that's what we want to do, is we want to generate awareness for that particular example. I was talking about Roberta's experience growing up as a Latin and how she encountered some challenges and how she overcame some. And just sometimes generating awareness is already a big step forward to see like, hey, these are some of the struggles that some people can face. And yeah, it's been very rewarding to see how many people participated, how many people pinged me afterwards saying this was great and really enjoyed it. I personally really enjoyed it. I was very surprised about like what the story she shared. So it's what gets you and motivates at least me to keep going.
Oh, for sure. So just out of curiosity, with the Hispanic or Latinx ERG, is that meant to be, or is it functioning now as just a group for people who identify as part of that demographic or part of that group? Or is it something that you try and involve other people, but, you know, that are outside of that demographic to kind of bring them in and understand? You know, like it's one of those things that I'm always curious about as a absolutely pale as hell white woman, is like, where is that line between trying to gain more information and learn more and help versus what spaces are just reserved for the safety of the people that are participating? So how do you treat that when it comes to your ERG?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's a question that we asked ourselves early on, and we opened it to anyone, like anyone who's interested. And we had one particular person who said like most of the people when we talked to them were like either Hispanic or Latinx, but there was this one particular woman who told us like, I'm not Hispanic, I'm not a Latin, but my husband has that heritage and I want to join because I want to learn more, I want to immerse myself in the culture. And I think that was eye-opening for a lot of us to say like, this is great, we want more people to be able to participate and be just a partner in this whole space rather than us dictating and trying to keep it a close group. Like we thought we would get a lot more out of like diverse views. And yeah, might be people we identify as Hispanic or Latinx, but it might be just a label where people can join and feel free to share, always being respectful, but yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely great. And you're right, there is just as much of a need, like you said, for spreading awareness within the community, not only of resources, but also some other things that other people are going through, because it might very much mirror your experience, or maybe it's completely different. And if you don't have, you know, that history in your backstory, you could still learn a lot from hearing what your fellow employees are going through. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. Now, I'd really like to know a little bit more. You talked a lot about how Smartsheet kind of fosters your talent and helps helps you to develop your career. I want to know a little bit more about that culture and about that atmosphere. What do you think it is about it that keeps people motivated and trying to achieve bigger and better things? Do you think it's just because they focus on elevating your career as you proceed through the company, or do you think it's more about the person first as opposed to the career as what could be useful to the company?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do think there's a lot of focus on people, especially this year in consulting. We spend a lot of time trying to focus on people and make sure that the culture is right. We know that especially going remote with the pandemic it's been a challenge to create or continue with the culture that we've had all these years, because we had a very close community in the office when you would just like hang out with people after work, maybe sometimes grab some drinks or go for dinner. And now like the whole readjustment with COVID and keeping that culture has made us take a step back and say like, we still need to make time for our people. Like for instance, we do like as managers have one-to-one check-ins to make sure that people are doing okay and that we're supporting them. And it's not just all about work. We are putting a lot more emphasis on like mental health and making sure that people are taking the time off that they need. Again, that's important. But the other piece, which is that professional development, I think that's also important because most people are here to continue growing and developing. And I do think we've been very lucky with our growth because a lot of opportunities have opened up. And where I do feel very grateful with Smartsheet is that with new opportunities, they're always constantly looking internally to see who's the best candidate. It's not like we're just going to look internally, but most of the times it's always been internal, like promotions and new roles being filled. And I think that's created also a very positive and very encouraging atmosphere where you do see that if you work hard, if you deliver, if you're constantly developing, that there's going to be opportunities for you.
Okay, now let's dive a little bit more into like how you've personally experienced this. Let's talk a little bit about how Smartsheet has supported you at different times and different levels of your career, because I'm really eager to see if the support was just different each time, like suitable to what you needed, or what was your experience like, or what has your experience been like?
Yeah, I think it has changed or evolved as I've grown in the organization. But for instance, when I started, I already had strong project management skills from previous roles. So I was quickly made like a project manager in my projects, and just the fact that they trusted and they gave me the opportunities to actually demonstrate that I had those skills and build that, like they could build that trust to say like, hey, I have the skills, the opportunity, so I'm going to deliver. When they saw that I was delivering, then I had the opportunity to manage larger engagements. And again, that's something that is not just given to anyone. Like people, you have to look at people's performance, but you also need to give people the opportunity. So I was given the opportunity. When I moved up to the senior role, again, is the trust of allowing me to help coach and mentor newer people. And again, it's that trust to say, well, I know you've been doing great, you've done a fantastic job, so now I'm going to give you additional responsibility, which is making sure that our newer folks are onboarding and are meeting their goals, because they themselves will need to go through that path, and we need you to do that. And now that I'm a manager, I have a team of 7 people, and again, that responsibility is even bigger, because now I have to make sure that those 7 consultants that I have, again, that they're meeting their goals, but also that they're happy, that they're not burning out. So I think the trust and responsibility has shifted with my role, but I felt like I've always had all those opportunities. So yeah.
That's so great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, I know that a lot of people that are tuning in are aware that Smartsheet is participating in our virtual job fair later this week. For everyone that's really interested in Smartsheet, or maybe people that haven't heard of Smartsheet yet, can you give us a little bit of a window into what the company culture is like there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share, honestly, since I joined, I've been positively surprised with the culture. I think one of the biggest things that I read when I was applying for a role, and that I still believe is true, is that the people are just a great asset to the organization. And regardless of the team, there's always someone willing to help you answer questions. And people are so friendly and open. I think we all have that growth mindset, which is also healthy, because we're always thinking like, hey, there's a lot of opportunities, but there's also opportunities for everyone. And if this is not your right opportunity, I'm sure somewhere within the organization, there could be that right opportunity. So absolutely, the people is the biggest asset. And the fact that everyone's so open and friendly, it's what gets you going when sometimes things get tough. It's you work together, not on your own.
I could not agree more. Let's talk a little bit about, like you said, you get to work with some really, really talented and unique people. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the qualities or skills that Smartsheet looks for when they're hiring talent? I know this can be drastically different from role to role, but in general, what are some things that make a successful Smartsheet employee?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Smartsheet in general just looks for people who are honest. I think that's one of our core values. In consulting, for instance, we look for people who are curious and willing to learn. Again, if you're going to help customers implement solutions, you will need to understand their processes, so be able to ask the right questions. Teamwork is crucial across the entire organization. Like, you need to be a great team player, because not only in consulting, but across the entire organization, you're always working with other people, even outside your department. So teamwork is crucial. Communication skills, I think, again, that's one important skill that you need to have, be able to communicate, not again, just with your immediate team or with a customer, with other departments. And overall, as I said, that growth mindset, where Smartsheet continues to grow and evolve, and you need to be prepared to want to be in that atmosphere. I know some people might prefer to have something like more stable or big and already settled, whereas we are constantly growing, changing, and evolving. And with that, it does come some change and evolution that you need to adapt to.
Absolutely. And that adaptability is, I feel like it's such an underrated soft skill, because people talk about things like communication, or they talk about, how easygoing someone is to work with. And, being adaptable will serve you in so many positions.
Yeah.
So as you were making this journey through Smartsheet, were there any special roles that your managers played in helping you along that path?
I think so. So when I started, I had my first manager was very hands-on and like spending a lot of time with me, like almost, I think when I started every day, I have like a 15-20 minute check-in with my manager, just to make sure that I was feeling comfortable. I could come in prepared with a lot of questions if I had, or just checking in to see how I was feeling mentally, so I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. And to me, that experience was pivotal, because I personally enjoyed the check-ins every day. I had a lot of questions. I had feedback that was taken in consideration even from day one. And I felt like it was almost a very tailored coaching for me as I was onboarding. Then as I continued moving up as a senior, I had a different manager, and that person was a little bit more hands-off. But again, I appreciated that, because it was like a message saying, I trust you, you're doing a good job. And yet we still had some check-ins to make sure like I was feeling supported and giving some steer and guidance. Or I always had access to my manager for any, like I have escalations, like how will you do this? And I would get the right steer or the right guidance required. And now as a manager, I remember when I first moved up to the manager role, I had to complete Managers University. That's how they call the training program. And again, it was something that they themselves didn't have, that they put together because they knew the challenges to like become a manager without like very little guidance. So I do appreciate that as we continue to grow, we're also constantly trying to see how to improve and make things better for the next generations. And that was a key part of it.
So do you feel like you, over this career journey, that you have come to maybe understand better or more highly value upper management? Or do you think that's something that you had a lot of value placed in early, and so that made it easier for you to kind of see yourself in a managerial role?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the latter, and also because when I moved to Smartsheet, I do feel like I had already significant work experience compared to some of my peers that were also starting at Smartsheet. And it was to an extent like starting from the beginning and then having to move up. But I do think that was my goal when I joined, obviously, like, yeah, starting from the beginning, but then moving up, hopefully at a faster pace, leveraging some of my experience, which I've been able to do and I've been given the opportunity to do. So that was my goal. I did have some managerial experience from previous roles, so I was keen to continue developing that portion. And again, as we continue to grow, it's something that continues to attract me, because I know there's going to be even more opportunities, and it's a lot of learning as part of this journey.
Absolutely. I think that's something that most people today can sympathize with. We're all going to be doing a lot of continuing education for the majority of our careers. So I want to get one last question in before we run out of time here. You said that you felt like you really had this personalized onboarding plan and a way to kind of get you up to speed when you were first entering the company. Do you feel like there was, like Pilar's career map like laid out for you at Smartsheet, or do you feel it was like less of a set in stone kind of thing? Do you think it was more organic?
I think it was more organic. I do think, and even with the time since I started, I've seen a lot of shifts and changes internally. Like, whereas at the beginning, maybe there was like one path that you'd expect almost everyone to follow. And when I joined, things started becoming more organic. My path was one. I've seen, like, when I got promoted to a manager, 3 other people in my region got promoted to a manager. So we all grew together and we all followed different paths. We all had different experiences that enabled us to get to that level, which has been really cool, because now that I'm working with my teams and I'm looking for their own growth, I have ideas of how they can carve their own path and follow different directions and still like end up in a similar level than others. Whereas when we started, I think it was still very nebulous.
Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to Pilar for joining us today. Before we let hand the stage back over to Mariela, is there any way that we can connect with you or support you and Smartsheet in your endeavors?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to provide my email if you want, and people can just reach out to me. I'm always curious and very excited to hear about other people. And yeah, if you have any questions in terms of opportunities, also let me know and I can connect you to the right person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to chat with you this morning. And don't forget, if y'all are interested in Smartsheet after what Pilar has been talking about, don't forget to register for our virtual job fair. We'll drop the links in the chat box on the website in just a moment. It's totally free. Smartsheet's going to be there, and you'll get to meet their team members. I'll be there, so you'll see at least one familiar face. So hopefully we'll see many of you join us during the virtual job fair. Mariela, all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Pilar. Thank you, Meg.